The stars outside the window of Dock 7 shone like frozen tears. Yalan stood quietly, his eyes fixed on the battered spaceship in front of him. It wasn't much, just an old, rusting cargo hauler that looked like it hadn't flown in years. But it was cheap, and that's all he needed. He wasn't looking for adventure, glory, or danger. He just wanted a quiet ship to start his own hauling business. Maybe carry fuel between moons, or scrap metal across the asteroid belts. The salesman, a tired older man with oil-stained gloves, handed over the digital key. "Take it or leave it, kid. It's yours now. No refunds. She's been sitting for a while, but she runs." Yalan nodded and took the key. He walked up the loading ramp, boots echoing on the metal floor. Inside, it smelled like stale air and forgotten dreams. He flipped on the lights. Half of them flickered or didn't turn on at all. Pipes hissed softly in the walls. He passed through the narrow corridor toward the engine bay. That's when he heard it. Something moved, a soft shuffle. Maybe a rat, he thought, or just air pressure adjusting. But when he reached the storage compartment, he froze. A pair of large, glowing eyes stared at him from the shadows. Not one. Pair-2.JALEN instinctively raised his flashlight. Huddled in the corner, behind broken crates and tangled wires, were two figures. One was small, trembling. The other was tall, clearly protecting the smaller one, with her arms wrapped tightly around the child. They weren't human. The taller one's skin shimmered with a faint silver hue, and her eyes were a shade of green not found on Earth. The child looked similar but had bright markings down her cheeks. Both were thin, exhausted, and scared. They didn't speak. They just stared at him. Afraid.JALEN lowered his flashlight. He didn't move closer. "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you." The alien woman didn't understand his words, but she didn't attack either. Instead, she kept her body between him and the child. Yalan slowly knelt, placing the flashlight on the ground and showing his empty hands. "You're survivors, aren't you?" There had been rumors, broken transmissions from outer colonies about evacuation failures. A sudden war that nobody understood. Ships that vanished. Whole sectors silenced. JALEN looked around the compartment. There were empty water packs, a cracked heating panel, and worn-out blankets. They'd been living here, hiding. Alone. He stood up and backed away. "You're safe now. I just bought this ship, but if you need food or help," he paused, realizing again they probably didn't understand a word. Still, the woman's expression changed slightly. The hard stare softened. Her shoulders relaxed. The child peeked over her arm with curious eyes. JALEN returned to the cockpit, heart pounding. What was he supposed to do now? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a pilot yet. He was just a guy trying to start over. And now, he had two alien stowaways hiding in his ship. He opened the emergency rations and poured some clean water into a cup. Then he went back and placed it near the door of the compartment without stepping in. "Here, I don't know your language, but I think you need this more than I do." He walked away again. A few minutes later, he heard slow movement, a cautious shuffle. He didn't turn around, but in the corner of his eye, he saw the child pick up the cup and drink. Back in the pilot seat, Yalan looked at the console, and then at the stars outside. This was supposed to be the beginning of a small, quiet life. Instead, he had stepped into something far bigger. Two alien lives now depended on him. And the war they had fled might not be far behind. Yalan didn't sleep. That night, he sat in the pilot's chair, staring out at the cold black of space, thinking about the two aliens hiding in his ship. He didn't even know their names. The galaxy was wide and cruel. What had they run from? What had they lost? Early morning. Ship time. He heard soft footsteps. Not heavy, not fast, just careful. He looked back and saw the child standing in the hallway, staring at him. Her tiny hands clutched the empty cup he'd given. Her eyes, glowing faint blue, weren't scared anymore. Just curious. Yalin offered a soft smile. Hey, little one. The girl tilted her head. Then she walked slowly up to him and placed the cup on the dashboard. She pointed at it, then at herself. Yalin blinked. You want water? He picked up the cup and stood. She followed him quietly to the small galley where he poured clean water. The girl sipped it quickly and smiled. For a second, Yalin saw something, maybe gratitude, maybe trust. Just then, the taller alien woman appeared at the end of the hallway. Her silver hair was messy, and her skin looked tired, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She moved fast, pulling the girl behind her, putting herself between them again. Yalin stepped back, holding his hands up. It's okay. She was just thirsty. She didn't speak, but her eyes studied him carefully. Slowly, she looked down at the girl, then back at Yalin. She said something in her language, soft musical tones that he couldn't understand. The girl replied, still holding Yalin's sleeve gently. The woman finally relaxed, just a little. She nodded. That nod meant more than words. Over the next 2 days, Yalin made small changes. He cleaned out the storage compartment and placed clean blankets inside. He moved old crates out, left fresh food packets near the door, and didn't push them. He didn't try to talk much, just made things easier. By the 3rd night, the woman and the girl came into the main cabin together. The child sat cross-legged on the floor, watching a tiny hologram he turned on for her, just spinning stars and lights. The woman stood by the wall, arms folded, silent. Yalin finally spoke. You don't have to be scared. I'm not sending you away. The woman tilted her head. Then she pointed at her chest. Riala, she said. Yalin blinked. Your name? She nodded. Then she pointed at the girl. Sorry. Riala, sorry, Yalin repeated. He smiled. I'm Yalin. Riala didn't smile back, but she didn't look away either. Sari reached out to touch the little spinning stars. She laughed when one changed color. Her voice was soft and sweet, and for a moment, Yalin forgot they were from a different world. That peace didn't last long. The next day, while checking the engine systems, Yalin noticed a red light blinking. Not from damage, but from a signal. The ship had sent out an automatic ping when he first powered it on. Someone had responded, and they were getting closer. He ran diagnostics and checked the frequency. It wasn't a rescue team. It was a patrol ship from the Polari Syndicate, the same group known for raiding refugee ships and capturing survivors. Yalin's chest tightened. If they scanned his ship and found Riala and Sari, it wouldn't end well. He rushed to the cabin. Riala stood quickly, sensing his panic. We've got trouble, he said, even though they couldn't understand. He pointed at the screen. A ship symbol appeared, closing in fast. Riala moved to the girl, picked her up, and looked back at Yalin. This time, it wasn't fear in her eyes. It was readiness. She was done running. Yalin looked at the old flight controls and cursed under his breath. He hadn't even tested them yet, but now he didn't have a choice. He sat down, powered up the thrusters, and turned to the aliens. Beside him, you trusted me, he whispered. Now I'll prove you were right. The ship trembled as Yalin pushed the engines to life. Warning lights blinked on the console, complaining about old parts and untested fuel lines, but he ignored them. The Polari Syndicate ship was closing in fast, and if they caught him with 2 alien refugees on board, there'd be no talking his way out. Riala stood beside him, holding Sari close. She stared at the radar screen, her sharp eyes reading the danger. Even if she didn't speak his language, she clearly understood what was coming. Yalin slammed his fist against the side panel. Come on, old girl, don't fail me now. The engines groaned but responded, lifting the ship off the dock. The stars shifted outside the window as they veered off course, dodging the first wave of scanners. But the Polari ship wasn't backing off. It began chasing them. Of course they wouldn't just leave, Yalan muttered. They smell profit. The syndicate didn't care about rules or mercy. They saw alien refugees as currency, rare bodies to be sold, experimented on, or worse. Yalan had heard the stories. And now, for the first time, they felt terrifyingly real. Riala tapped his arm and pointed to a glowing section on the star map. She spoke quickly, her words full of urgency. I don't understand, Yalan said, but then noticed what she was pointing to, a gas cloud nearby, dense enough to scramble radar. You want me to fly through that? She nodded firmly. Yalan hesitated only a moment. Then he turned the ship toward the swirling mist of glowing orange and green. The Polari ship followed, but not as fast. Their scanners were more advanced, but even they had trouble in gas fields. As soon as they entered the cloud, the lights dimmed. The engines whined under the pressure, and the ship shook harder. Sari buried her face in Riala's shoulder, but the mother whispered gently to her in their language, keeping her calm. Yalan squinted through the front window. Visibility was almost gone. Only blurs of color and shadows of stars. He slowed the ship and used manual steering, relying on instinct more than tech. Behind them, a blip on the screen showed the Polari ship struggling to keep up. Yalan smiled. That's it. Come on, just a little deeper. Suddenly, the ship jolted. Damn turbulence! He shouted, gripping the controls. Panels sparked, and part of the hull groaned loudly. Riala grabbed the side rail but didn't scream. Sari looked scared now but not crying. She watched Yalan with wide eyes, like she was trying to understand if he could protect them. Yalan steered the ship downward into a thicker part of the cloud. The heat sensors blinked red. Everything screamed danger. And then, silence. The radar cleared. The Polari ship had vanished. Yalan held his breath. He checked the screens again. No signals, no movement. They were gone. We did it, he whispered. We lost them. He leaned back in the chair. Exhausted. Riala placed a hand on his shoulder. She didn't speak, but her eyes held a different expression, now soft, steady. Thankful. Yalan looked up at her. I don't know what you've been through, but I swear, I'm not going to let anyone take you again. Sari reached out and touched a broken piece of the console. Then she gave a tiny laugh. It was the first time he'd heard her sound happy. Later, Yalan made them both warm food from the emergency supplies. They ate together in the quiet cabin, sharing a moment that felt strange and peaceful. He looked at the two of them. Alien, yes, but also tired, gentle, and very real. He thought he was buying a ship to start a business. Instead, he found a family running from war. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear. He wasn't flying alone anymore. Jalen woke up to soft humming. It wasn't coming from the ship's systems. It was Riala. She sat in the corner of the cabin, gently brushing Sari's silver-white hair as the little one slept curled beside her. The sound was soothing, like a lullaby, even though Yalan couldn't understand the words. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. For the first time since he found them, Riala looked calm. Her sharp eyes were softer, her body no longer tense like a soldier ready to run. She didn't look like a fugitive now. She looked like a mother. After breakfast, Yalan got to work on the ship. The gas cloud had damaged several systems. Cooling lines were cracked, and the backup thruster was completely fried. They needed a safe place to land and repair everything. He scanned the local star map. The nearest unregulated trade station was a few light jumps away. Station Zalos 9. It wasn't friendly, but it was neutral. Mostly. Riala stood behind him, watching the star map over his shoulder. When he selected Zalos 9, she didn't say anything, but her face showed concern. I know, Yalan said, glancing at her. It's risky, but we can't keep drifting forever. She looked at Sari, then back at him. She nodded slowly. The trip took several hours. During the flight, Sari sat on Jalen's lap, giggling as he showed her how to press harmless buttons that made lights blink on the dashboard. Riala sat nearby, alert, but not stopping the interaction. It was strange comforting, even. Like they had done this before. Like it wasn't just luck that had brought them together. When they arrived at Salos 9, the station looked like a floating junkyard. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked along rusty metal arms. Lights flickered across the outer rings, and security drones floated lazily, watching everything. Jlen docked quietly and turned to Riala. "I'll go outside. Get parts. You stay here, all right?" Riala surprised him by stepping forward. She pointed at herself, then at him. "You want to come with me?" She nodded firmly. He wasn't sure if it was safe. But leaving her and Sari alone in a strange port wasn't a great idea either. In the end, he agreed. He found a long coat to hide her alien features. With her hood up and head down, she blended in well enough. Sari stayed on the ship, safely locked inside. They moved through the crowded station, passing traders, pirates, miners, and strange alien merchants. The air was thick with smoke and metal dust. Yalen found a parts dealer and started bargaining. While he talked, Riala drifted away, watching everything. She moved like someone trained, eyes always scanning, steps careful. Then something went. Our own GA drunk miner bumped into her. Her hood slipped slightly, revealing a bit of her glowing skin. The man froze. "You're not. What the hell are you?" Before Yalen could step in, the man reached for her arm. She reacted fast. Too fast. With one smooth move, she twisted his wrist and shoved him to the ground. He groaned in pain, and a crowd turned toward them. "Alien!" Someone shouted. Jalen grabbed her arm. "Run!" They dashed through the station, weaving through alleys and vendor stalls. Blaster alarms echoed in the distance. Riala kept pace easily, moving like a ghost through the crowd. Back at the dock, Yalen slammed the hatch closed and powered the ship up. As they launched, station patrol ships started scanning them, but they were already out of range. In the cockpit. Breathless, Yalen turned to Riala. "You used to be a soldier, didn't you?" She didn't answer. She just looked down. Sari ran to her mother and hugged her waist tightly. Yalen sat back in the pilot's chair, heart still pounding. Whatever past Riala had, it was starting to show. And the more he learned, the more dangerous it became. Hours passed before the tension in the ship eased again. Yalen had plotted a new course far from major patrol zones. The space ahead was empty, silent, peaceful. But inside the ship, his mind wasn't calm. He sat at the table, sipping from a dented metal cup, staring at Riala across from him. She sat quietly, wrapping Sari in a blanket while the child slept on her lap. "You saved us back there," he finally said. "You knew exactly what to do. You weren't just a civilian." Riala met his eyes. Then, for the first time, she began to speak not in her language, but in broken, halting English. "I was Protector before war." Yalen blinked. "Protector?" She nodded slowly. "High World, Guardian, Elite, I Guard Council." "Like royal security?" Riala gave a faint smile. "Yes, like that." Yalen leaned forward. "What happened?" She looked down at Sari and brushed a hand through the child's silver hair. Her voice trembled slightly. "Attack, our city. Burned. Enemy ships came fast. No warning, we lost many. I take Sari, I run. Hide, ship broken. We sleep in dark." "Wait." Yalen felt a cold knot in his chest. "You've been hiding inside that ship all this time, alone?" Riala nodded. "Months." "We have no one." He sat back quiet. All this time, they'd been living in fear, waiting for someone to find them, and that someone had been him. A guy just looking to buy a cheap hauler. "Why didn't you leave the ship?" he asked. Not safe, she said. Syndicate take my people. We are rare. They sell. He clenched his fists. I know. I saw what they did to others. I won't let that happen to you. Not to either of you. She watched him carefully, searching his face for any sign of lie. Then she nodded once. It was a silent agreement. Later, while Yalin worked on repairing the cracked cooling lines, Sari skipped into the room holding a data slate. She pointed at it and made a few beeping noises. Then she said something in her language and laughed. Jalen chuckled. That thing hasn't worked in years. Sari pressed buttons anyway and then raised it above her head like a trophy. From the corner, Riala smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since they met. Jalen paused, wiping sweat from his brow. You should teach me your language, he said, looking at Riala. If we're going to keep flying together, I want to talk to you properly. She seemed surprised, but after a moment, nodded. She walked to the wall, pulled out an old marker, and began writing alien symbols on the metal panel. Beside each one, she drew a rough shape. A star, a ship, a hand, a heart. Yalin stood beside her, watching closely. What's that? He asked, pointing to the heart symbol. Riala paused. Means protection. He raised an eyebrow. Not love? She looked at him and shook her head gently. Different word for love, he smiled. Teach me that one next. The moment was quiet, filled with something unspoken. Not romance, not yet, but a connection was growing. A bond stronger than language. Later that night, alarms sounded again, but this time they weren't under attack. A distress signal. Yalin checked the console. It was a civilian ship, half a system away, sending out a weak SOS. He hesitated. They were still in danger. They should stay hidden, but Riala touched his shoulder. Go, she said. We help. Like you help us. Yalin looked at her for a long second. Then he changed course. Whatever they were becoming, crew. Allies, something more. It started with a single choice. To protect others. Just as he had chosen to protect them. The stars shifted as Jalin's ship jumped into the nearby system, following the weak distress signal. The console showed signs of a small vessel, barely powered, drifting near a dead moon. No signs of weapons. No known flag. Just one fading beacon, pulsing in the silence of space. Jalen slowed their approach, scanning for danger. Riala stood behind him, watching every move. Sari sat on the chair beside them, hugging a small blanket. No other ships, Yalin said quietly. If this is a trap, it's a bad one. He guided their ship close and opened a short-range transmission. This is the cargo vessel Argo. We received your signal. Are you in need of assistance? For a moment, nothing. Then a weak voice came through. Male, shaky and tired. Please. Help. Life support failing. We have a child aboard. Yalin looked at Riala. She nodded once. They docked carefully, connecting to the airlock of the broken vessel. Yalin moved first, holding a small light and a scanner. The other ship's hallway was dark and cold. Wires hung from the ceiling. The walls were covered in frost. In the central cabin, he found them, a man in a worn-out pilot suit and a tiny alien child curled against him, barely moving. Their faces were pale, their breaths shallow. Hang in there, Yalin said, kneeling beside them. We'll get you out. Riala appeared behind him moments later, wrapped in a cloak. She gently lifted the child in her arms, while Yalin supported the man. Back on Argo, they used the last of the emergency med supplies. The child recovered quickly with warmth and food. The man, older, thin, and clearly injured, took longer. But he opened his eyes after a few hours. Yalin gave him water. What happened out there? The man coughed. Raiders. They boarded us near the outer ring, took everything, left us to die. He looked at Riala, then at Sari, and finally back at Yalin. You're not one of them? Yalin shook his head. We're just travelers now. The man chuckled weakly. Then I owe you my life, Yalin smiled. No debt. We've all lost something. The man rested again, and for a while, the ship felt strangely warm. Two families now, thrown together by war, pain, and kindness. Later, Yalin and Riala stood together near the ship's front window, watching the stars. You didn't have to come with me, he said softly. You could have stayed hidden. You didn't have to help us, Riala replied in her slow, clear English. He looked at her. Do you still want to find your people, your homeworld? Riala stared out at the stars for a long moment. I don't know if home still lives, she whispered. But sorry. She is my reason now. Yalin nodded. Then let's make a new home. Together. She turned to him, her silver eyes shimmering faintly. Together, she repeated. Sari ran up to them and pulled at Yalin's sleeve. Come, she said, smiling wide. See light. She dragged him toward the back window where the engine's blue glow lit up the dark. Jalen laughed. It was the first time he had laughed like that in a long time. He didn't just have a ship anymore. He had purpose. He had people who needed him, a protector, a child, a survivor. And now, a family. The past would always follow them. The syndicate still hunted. War still burned in the shadows of space. But inside this small ship, something stronger had taken root. Trust, hope, and maybe, just maybe, love. As the ship flew forward through the endless stars, Yalin placed a hand on the window beside Sari. Whatever waited ahead, they would face it together.